Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to explore private space in CloudHub 2.0. So private space is a virtual isolated space where you can deploy your application and you can create your private network. And it's more like the VPC concept in CloudHub 1.0. So let's start configuring a private space. Okay. So to start configuring a private space, even before starting the private space creation, we need to first go to access management and see that whether we have the necessary permissions. If not, then we need to assign necessary permission. So for me, I have these permissions already assigned. So if you see, these are the three permissions are necessary to manage and create a private space. For creating and managing, you need organization administrator and CloudHub network administrator permission. For read-only access to just see the private space configuration, you need to have CloudHub network viewer permission. Okay, so now we can go to runtime manager. Let the runtime manager come. Yes, and then there will be an option private space. So I have to create that private space, and I need to create a private space. So with my access, I am allowed to create only one private space, but with an enterprise access, you can create as many private space as you want, and you can deploy your private space in different regions. So let's start creating private space. Let me give a name, my private space. So once you give that private space name, you cannot change it once the private space got created. So if you have to change the name, the only option is to delete the private space entirely and then recreate with a new name. So let me create the private space. Okay, now the private space got created. Now I have to create the private network as a next step. So I'll click this create network button. And here I can select region. I think we have 12 region where we can select or deploy our private network. So I can select the default one, or I'm taking USs just to show you that I can change the default region to a different region. Yeah. So next important thing is that I have to uh, define a CIDR block. So one a note of caution that when you are defining your CIDR block, be absolute necessary that this is the CIDR block you want to use for your private network within the private space, because once it gets created, if you have to change the CIDR block, you have to there is no option to edit the CIDR block again. You have to delete the entire private space and then you have to recreate it from scratch with the new CIDR block. And you also need to confirm or need to ensure that the CIDR block you are using for your private space need to be unique across all the external network you are going to later connect with your private network. So, so that there should not be any subnet clashing. So let me give the CIDR block. I'm just creating it as a POC purpose. I'm just taking any CIDR block because anyways, after this video, I'm going to delete this private space. Let me put it like this and let me click on create. So this will start creating the private network for my private space. So you see the region is showing US East 1. This is the CIDR block I have taken. And this is internal DNS server. So if you have your own corporate DNS server and if you want your host to be resolved in that internal DNS server, in the sense all the host within deployed within your uh, private space means all your applications, their host name, application deployed on your private space, their host name, if you want to resolve them through your own corporate internal DNS server, then you can click on this configure and you can provide your internal DNS server details. So you can provide all the server IP addresses and all your company domains or whatever domains you are going to resolve through this internal DNS that you need to define here. And if you have multiple domains or multiple IP addresses, you can define them or mention them with comma separation. Okay, so I'm not going to do that, so I'm just canceling it. Once your this private network setup is done, it will show you the private DNS target. Now it's showing you the public DNS target. So this will be your public host name also. And then it will show you the inbound static IPs and outbound static IPs. But it will take more or less 30 minutes to complete the configuration. So we need not to wait. We can continue with other configuration, means other aspects of private space configuration. So next thing is that connection. So I can create connection with the external network. That means suppose I have an application running on my own data center or my another VPC, another VPC, maybe I have created a VPC for other applications to in my AWS or Azure or GCP GCP cloud, and I want to create a connection from my applications, mule applications running on my private space to that application or like a database or any other application which is residing at my data center. So to connect these two network, my private space and that external network, I can use these create connection options. If I click on create connection, there are two types. I'm not going to create it because at this moment I don't have all the details or I don't have any data center or my local network or any VPC of my own in AWS or GCP, but you guys can explore. So you can create connection using VPN, which is IPsec VPN tunnel, or you can use a transit gateway. You have to give a connection name. Suppose I'm giving it that my connection, and if you click next, then you can start configure your VPN. So you have to give the remote IP. You have to select whether you are going to use a BGP routing type or a static routing type, and all you have to provide all the details, and then you can create your VPN. Similarly, you can configure transit gateway also. So these are the two options available using which you can connect the external network. So let me cancel this. Next important thing is this domain and TLS. So you can create a TLS context and configure the TLS context for a domain. So there always, once this network got created, there will be a default TLS context created. But if you want to create your own domain using your say company vanilla domain like mycompany.com or something like that, instead of using cloudhub.io.net, so in that case, you can create that domain and you can create multiple domain in fact. And once you deploy a application in your CloudHub private space, you have an option or privilege to add multiple private endpoint based on the number of domains you have created here. So I can create a TLS context. Let's click on create TLS context and then let me show you. So I already have a certificate configuration created and I used OpenSSL to create a certificate for, I have created one private .pem file and a certificate.pem file, which I'm going to use for creating a domain. This is my domain, myorg.com. And here I am using a wildcard certificate. Yeah. So here I'm going to use a wildcard certificate so that I can use this domain with multiple subdomains. So any subdomain API1, API2, API3.myorg.com will be accepted through this certificate or through this TLS context. Okay. So another option instead of wildcard, because if you use wildcard certificate, it can take anything. If I send my name ananda.myorg.com, that will also be allowed. So if you don't want to do that, then another option is to use subject alt certificate, which is or SAN certificate, which means where you can give the list of subdomain. You can specify list of subdomain, and any traffic coming from that listed subdomain are only allowed. I mean, this is little bit better than wildcard certificate. Anyways, for this configuration, I'm going to use wildcard certificate. So let me go to my Anypoint Studio, sorry, Anypoint platform, and yeah, just one moment. So now, once I in the create TLS context, I can upload the certificate using PEM file. I mean, I can upload it as a PEM file or I can upload it as a JKS file. So I have created my certificate as PEM file. So in the public certificate, I'll choose, and let me go back to my, yeah. So from here, I have already created this .pem file here. So I will give this is my public certificate. I will attach it over here, and then I will choose private key, and I will give this private key certificate here. Okay. So both the files are uploaded. Okay, so I just changed my private key and certificate because I want to use a password protected certificate and key. So let me choose the file once again. So uh, this is my public certificate, and let me choose my private key. This is my private key. Okay, and I use this command. You see, and I am going to use the password as password. So let me give password here. So, okay, ID. Okay. And since I'm using self-signed certificates, I'm not going to configure any trust store and CA path certificate. So, but yeah, if you are using a CA certificate, then you have to define trust store. Um, and keep your CA certificates inside the trust. So yeah, so that is more or less what I need to do, bare minimum to create a TLS context. And this domain configuration for this TLS context, whatever I am doing, it will not work. In the sense, using this domain, someone from outside this VPC or private space cannot call my application, because this example, I mean, whatever myorg.com domain I have used in my certificate, that is not a registered domain. So in real scenario, what will happen? You have a registered domain. Your customer will have a registered domain with that domain, registered domain in the sense the from a means that domain has been purchased for that customer, for that organization, and then that domain is registered to a public DNS. And once or your DNS provider, I mean, once you use this TLS context with that domain, so then you have to go to your DNS provider, and you have to uh, add a DNS record like this. It is already given over here. So what you need to do, and if you don't know that who is your DNS provider, you can use this who is and you can check that who is going to, I mean, you can check your DNS provider. And then in that DNS, I mean, inside that DNS, you have to create a DNS record. So you have to create a CNAME, and you have to connect your CNAME with the private space host name. So this is the default host name, and this is the fully qualified uh, DNS name or domain name, which is going to be exist as a CNAME into your domain. Means if you are trying to use myorg.com or your companies or your organization's vanilla domain uh, mapped to your private space, in the sense using that same vanilla domain, your applications are accessible, applications that are running on private space are accessible, then what you need to do, you need to go to your DNS provider, and there you have to create a CNAME record. That CNAME record on that vanilla domain should map to your actual default domain of your public space. Okay. So once we deploy an application, we can see. But as I mentioned, since mine is just a domain, just a random name, I have used myorg.com, and it is not a registered domain. So I cannot use to call my application. I cannot use that domain. Okay, I just show this to just to give you an idea how to create a TLS context in the private space. Okay, so next, I have to click on this create TLS context. So it will be creating a TLS context. Okay. And the TLS context creation is done. Uh, Let me check the network. Okay. It's still going on. Okay. Next, we can go and create the firewall rule. Okay. So in firewall, in CloudHub 2.0, you can create, I mean, CloudHub 2.0 private space, you can configure both ingress rule and egress rule. Okay. And for ingress rule, I'm just clicking edit, and you can select, I mean, if I click on this is HTTP rule, so you can select the protocol. It can be HTTP, HTTPS, or TCP. And source, you can create any destination. You can create local private network in the, I mean, if it is local private network, that means your private space only can accept the inbound traffic. Uh, means inbound traffic, it can accept only the traffic from the private network itself. Okay. And also you can give a custom IP address, and you can through which you can define this CIDR range, which is allowed to send traffic to this private space. Okay, so let us go back to the default. So I'm just keeping it as any destination for now. And same is for HTTPS. And ports are by default for HTTPS, it's 443, and HTTP, it's 80. At this moment, for ingress rule, you cannot define any other, or for ingress traffic, you cannot define any other port apart from HTTP and HTTPS. So when I'm talking about HTTP as 80 or HTTPS as 443, that's for the someone trying to connect from outside your VPC to from say from public internet, someone is trying to connect your send a HTTP traffic, then it by default, I mean, they has to send it on 80 port 80, or if it is HTTPS, then they have to send it on port 443. If it is TCP, then you can provide a port range above 1024, because anything 1024 or below is not allowed for TCP also. Okay, let me give this HTTPS as it was earlier. Okay, let me cancel, and because I don't want to create any ingress rule, I want to go with the default ingress rule. For egress rule, if I edit egress rule, you can For TCP, again, you can have option to select any destination, local private network or custom IP address. And for HTTPS or HTTP, also you have all these options, I mean, same destination option. So you can add multiple rule. I can add rule, and you can allow egress or outbound traffic to reach to TCP, HTTPS, then UDP, HTTP. Okay. Or you can use any protocol, whatever you want, as per your requirement. So that is how you are going to define the firewall rule. So if you are going to means for your object store, for any point MQ or for API manager to connect, you have to select HTTPS egress rule. I mean, you have to allow your private space to send outbound traffic over HTTPS protocol. So once you are done configuration, you have to click Save Changes. I'm just canceling it out. As I mentioned, I'm not going to use anything other than what is available default at this moment. Then you can select the environment. So what you can do, you can select the business group. So I have the business group. I can select this business group and its children. So I have the org created. Root org is Salesforce in my, I mean, this is how my org and business groups are organized. And the child is this POC org or PSC business group. So I'm going to select this business group and its children. And for environment, I can select all environment, all sandbox environment, or all production environment. Or if I select, suppose, any one business group, then I also have an option to select environment manually. And I can choose some of the environments from this business group or root org, or so I can leave some of the environment out of this private space. But for the time being, I'm going to use this business group and its children, and I'm going to select all environment, and I'm going to save the changes. Okay. So then there is advanced tab. So some of the advanced configuration I can do in the private space. So uh, as HTTP request, I have three options. I can redirect any HTTP request to HTTPS on the same URL, or I can directly accept any HTTP request, or I can silently drop any HTTP request. So anything HTTP request is that it's not secure, it's not HTTPS. So based on my security requirement, I can take any one of the option. At this moment, I'm taking default redirect to HTTPS option. Then read response timeout is 300 seconds, so I can increase, decrease it, this response timeout based on my requirement. And as it is mentioned over here, that once this response timeout, I mean, after 300 seconds, if there is no response come back from the application running within the private space, then it will get a throw a 504 error. Uh, then there are Ingress load balancer logs, so check the I can download and check the log. So I already downloaded one log, and I can show you that. Let me show you one of the samples. So this is one of the sample Ingress log what I just downloaded before starting this video. I mean, I had one private space which I deleted and started recreating creating a private space fresh to show you how to do the configuration. But this is how the Ingress log looks like. So let me go back to here. Okay. So now I can also define the severity of the log. So it can be error, debug, trace, or info. So I recommended is error because more log or verbose you generate, it will always be little bit, I mean, it can impact on your overall performance. So yeah, so I'm just using this recommended error, and there is a customized log level to help troubleshoot. So for what I can do, I can provide some IP addresses, and I can provide the log level, specific log level. So for those specific IP addresses, application running on those IP addresses, it will generate, more logs or customized logs. So you can also, if you have a AWS IAM role, service role, then you can also access application. I mean, you can allow applications to access your AWS resources using this IAM service role. So for that, you need to enable AWS Service Bus, and then once you save the changes, it will generate a role name, a unique service role name, which you need to share and provide into your AWS IAM. And these are the three steps you need to do. Yeah, so you have to use the unique AWS IAM role name that this platform will generate once you save that change. And then you have to use that organization ID. I mean, organization ID in the sense where the private space is configured. That organization ID you have to use in your AWS IAM. And then you have to allow the outbound traffic on port 443 from your private space firewall rule. And that way, it will uh, allow you to access your Amazon Web Service application or resources. My bad, not application, resources. So your application can access AWS resources. So let me remove this. I'm not going to do that. The other major thing what I forgot to mention is in the firewall rule. So you have network level rule, you have app level rule. So if I create a app level rule, so why we need a app level rule? So suppose I have a ingress or egress rule defined, sorry, not ingress, egress rule defined, which will tell that any application running within this private space, they can send traffic to a specific protocol and to a specific, uh, uh, sorry. So it is allowed to send to a specific protocol and to a specific destination. Uh, but if situation arises that I have one application I have to deploy in the private space, and in generic, the private space can route traffic based on this egress rule to some destinations, multiple destinations. Suppose it can send traffic to a TCP, it can send traffic to HTTPS, but now I'm deploying an application which only allowed to send data to or send traffic to TCP, not any HTTPS protocol, then I have to create a rule group over here. And once we create a rule group, and in that rule group, I will define that this rule group is allowed to send traffic to a specific, say, to only to TCP destination or TCP protocol. So once I create that rule group, then when I deploy the app in runtime, and I will show you when I deploy an app in this private space, there will be an option in the firewall runtime property firewall tab where I can define that app level egress rule, this rule group, through which I can restrict traffic further, egress traffic or outbound traffic further at app level. But once the traffic is going out from your application, that traffic where, the destination or to that traffic should be allowed by both egress rule as well as the app level egress rule. Means network level egress rule as well as app level egress rule. Then only it will reach to the destination. So if I don't allow any TCP outbound traffic to TCP, on network level rule, but I have created one app level rule group for TCP destination, then it will not work. So if I have to allow a app to send data to TCP, then I have to allow it in both the places. Okay. So this is more generic network level. So this is applicable to all application, and app level egress rule are again further refinement. So where I can specify outbound traffic further at app level. And for Ingress, it's not available. I mean, app level Ingress rule is not available yet. But yeah, egress, we have that control. So I have just enable this. Once I enable, one default egress rule already created. So that default egress rule will be applied to all application I'm going to deploy. The one option is that I should not, I mean, I can disable this. So if I delete and disable app level rule, then all my application by default will going to follow network level rule. But if I enable this, then all application will start using this default app rule. And if I want to add any specific app level egress rule, then I have to create rule groups and I can add those rule group to my application. So I will show you once this private space got created. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. Let me see whether the network was created. Yeah. So now my private space or private network also got created. And you can see the static IPs are all available. Private DNS target is also showing. So this is internal hyphen, whatever is my public DNS target. So next thing what we are going to do, we are going to test this private space by deploying an application into it. Okay, so now let's deploy one application. I'm just deploying it manually. Just giving it this name. Okay, we'll upload my jar file locally to open it. Okay, I already published one video how you can use connected app to deploy your application on CloudHub 2.0 private space. I will give the link to the description box. If you want, you can refer that also. But for this video, I'm doing it manually. One thing you can notice that I have this different release channel. This is newly added. So if I select none, I'll have runtime version up to 4.44. If I use Edge, I have 4.6. And if I use long-term support, I have 4.6. So I'm just using Edge for now. So maybe I can release another video to explain what is Edge and what is long-term support, a short video on that. And I can select Java version as Java 8 or Java 17. For this deployment, I'm just using Java 8 and I'm taking everything as it is. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, if I go to firewall rules, since I have already created or enabled egress rule at application level, so now the default egress rule group is automatically attached. If I create additional rule group, then I can get option from here. From this drop down, I will get all the rule groups I have created and I can select the required rule group. So now, since I have only one rule group created, the default one, so I will just select the default one. So once you enable the egress rule group, application level egress rule group, it will by default create this default rule group as I mentioned. And this is one rule group, at least one default rule group will be created, even if you are not going to create any more rule group of your own. And default egress rule group you cannot delete. Rest of the rule group you can delete, but default rule group you cannot delete. What you can do, you can switch off application level rule group altogether. But if it is enabled, then there will be a default rule group. I mean, it's mandatory. It will be there. You cannot delete it. Okay. So now I click on deploy application. and let the application get deployed. I'm pausing the video. Once it got deployed, I will come back and complete the rest of the. Okay, so now my app deployed. It's in running state. Let me go to click on the app, and if I go to Ingress tab now, we already create one TLS context. I mean, this is the default public endpoint. If I use this default public endpoint and I just give the URI and see it is successful, that means my application, I can connect to my application using this default uh, uh, domain or default TLS context. So but the domain name is cloudhub.io. If I want to use my own domain, for that I can click add endpoint, and then from that drop down you see that myorg.com is also coming. So I can select this myorg.com, start.myorg.com as host. So since I use a wildcard certificate, I can use app name, I mean subdomain. So I can define anything in the subdomain. Suppose instead of app name, if I want to use say API hyphen dev or API hyphen UAT, so that will also work. Okay, and maybe in the path I can define app name, and this way I can reconfigure my URL. So host will be start.myorg.com. I can create subdomain as suppose API hyphen my environment. So make the subdomain more environment specific, and say, let's keep it as API dev, and then slash put app name, and that way it will be API dev myorg.com slash private space. So whatever way I want to organize it, right? So instead of suppose if I don't use wildcard certificate and instead I use a SAN certificate where I can give a list of subdomains allowed. So there I can do that. I can define subdomain as API-dev, API-UAT, API-QA, API-prod, like, I mean, environment specific subdomain. Maybe I have 4 or 5 environments. So I will keep 4 or 5 subdomains in that certificate. And then in the path, I will keep on appending the app that I'm going to deploy, the app name. So that way also I can configure my TLS, and I mean, I can configure my TLS context, and I can configure the corresponding subdomain. So it's up to you, but things are possible. Okay, but it will not work. Let me, as I mentioned, because this subdomain, whatever I am using, it is not a registered or purchased subdomain. So for I mean, since it is just a dummy subdomain, sorry, the dummy domain, I'm just created something of my own, myorg.com. I just use this to create a self-signed certificate. So I'm not getting any error, but if I try to use this URL to connect my uh, application running on my private space, it will not work. For that, as I mentioned, that you need to do you want to purchase a domain, and then in that DNS provider, you need to do a CNAME entry, and then it will start working. Okay, so you can do part 3, right, forward SSL session. Maybe it needs another video to explain all the other things. So I am stopping over here. Hope you understand how to create a private space. And if you find it useful, then please do like, subscribe my channel. I mean, that's a great motivation to come up with more videos like this. And also comment on this video. So if you have anything, and yeah, and it's a mutual learning. So thanks for being with me. I know it's a long video, but thanks for being with me. Thanks for listening me up to till the end. Thanks a lot. Very soon again, I will come back with another video. Thank you.